Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to have XYPN members Courtney and Morgan Randstrom on the show today. This sibling pair are incredibly dynamic and doing some really interesting things in their business. After both trying out other careers, they ended up working with their father at a financial planning firm. They eventually broke away and formed Trailhead Planners, and their father is a silent partner in the venture. The two co-founders have complementing skill sets, with Morgan being more the big picture idea guy and Courtney being more the realist, focusing on the operations of the firm, which works really well together. Courtney works from their office in Oregon, while Morgan works from their office in Minneapolis, and they both meet with clients virtually. They have an interesting niche in working with clients that have a passion for their environmental footprint. They do a lot of investment research and build carbon neutral model portfolios and focus on those conversations with clients. Even though it may feel a little contradictory given their investment experience and expertise, they're huge fans of the Kinder Life Planning Program and Money Quotient, providing real financial planning to their clients. So they provide an awesome blend of comprehensive financial advice with investment expertise, which is really cool to learn more about. They readily admitted that they're still trying to decide how far down the niche rabbit hole they want to go, and talked about the work that they're doing with their business coach, Arlene Moss, on the topic. Did you know that 72% of callers who reach an automated answer will hang up without leaving a message and often call another advisor? A missed call can cost you a new client or chance to grow wallet share with existing ones. That's why finance professionals rely on Ruby's live receptionist to answer calls, transfer only the calls they want, take messages, collect new client intake, make follow-up calls, and more, allowing them to accomplish more and grow. Let Ruby help you increase productivity and give outstanding client service with every call. For a special offer, visit callruby.com/XYPN and use promo code XYPN, or better yet, call them at 844-853-7829. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/152. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Courtney and Morgan. Hey, Courtney and Morgan, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Hey, Alan. Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us.
So, yeah, this is the second set of siblings that we've had on the show in the last few months. The last time it was sisters. So welcome to the show, Morgan. But I'm excited. Courtney, I got to know you a little bit at the Accelerate conference here that we hosted in Bozeman last month. It'll be 2 months ago by the time this goes live. But sad Morgan wasn't able to make it. But yeah, welcome to the show. To give listeners a bit of an overview, just sort of where things are at today, could one of you sort of give me just a high level of the firm, the roles that y'all play, how many clients, where you're located, just sort of a broad overview, and then we'll dig into the details.
Yeah, so we are located in Portland. That's where my office is, in Minneapolis, where Morgan's located. And we spun off from a larger firm that was originally started by our father in the 80s. I was 3, Morgan was 0, and he wasn't quite around yet. And my dad grew it in the upper Midwest. We grew up in Fargo, and we peaked at about $150 million. We owned it with my dad and another non-family member business partner. And then we just decided that it was best if we kind of go our different ways. We had different kind of ideas for what we wanted to do and what was important to us. So we got bought out the end of 2016, and we started Trailhead Planners in 2016. And then we ended up taking about, I think, maybe 20 million in assets with us from our previous firm. So there was a lot of clients that did fit kind of what we were doing and, wanted to move over with us. And so we took them with us, which was a really nice base to start from. And we recognize that not everyone has that when they're starting in this industry or when they open a firm. So that definitely made the transition a little bit easier in some ways.
So how many clients are you serving today?
I would say for households, it's probably about 50 right now with some financial planning clients thrown in. Does that sound right, Morgan?
Yeah. So we have, I'll say, recurring revenue from like 33 households. And then, we're kind of doing some one-time plans. And so that gets us, 40, 45, somewhere in there, I'd say.
Okay. And do you have sort of a typical client profile or some type of niche, or is it pretty varied right now?
Well, we're working with Arlene on this. So
fair enough.
My first plug will be for Arlene. But, we find that, we have a specialty in social responsible investing. And we're kind of experts in that space. And so a lot of our clients, I'd say about 60% of our clients do socially responsible investing, and leaning more towards the, environmental concerns, low carbon portfolios, ESG, which is, indexes that screen for environmental and social and governance stuff. Unless I know there's like, some Christian biblical, social responsible stuff, and we don't do much of that. So that's, I don't know if you'd call that a niche, Alan. Maybe you can act as a consultant here. But,
we can talk through it. No, I definitely, again, the term niche has sort of been sort of narrowed into just looking at a single profession. And that's absolutely not the case. I think you can absolutely have a niche around clients that have similar values, whether that be, shown through the investing process or the financial planning process, because there are going to be things that a client who has a passion for, for their carbon footprint and are really focused on that, they're going to make different decisions throughout their planning process and their investment management that a client that doesn't care may make. I don't know anybody on the other side of like trying to create carbon, but like, but like if someone just doesn't care, it will be different. Yeah. And if you don't care about it, but your client does, it's also a little awkward. They're, like, I believe in this. And you're like, whatever. Like it's not really important. So very cool. Well, thank you for that background. So just real quick, Courtney, I'll ask you first, what was sort of your path into financial planning and ending up at your father's firm, or have you always has this sort of been your career?
No. Out of undergrad, I went to law school for a year and worked for an attorney, and I hated it. And so fortunately, my university had an MBA program. So I switched to that, and I got my MBA from Willamette University out here in Oregon. And then I worked for the state for 2 years as an internal auditor. I worked at Department of Human Services. So a lot of like Medicaid auditing, temporary assistance to needy families, like a lot of those social programs, adoption assistance. So it was really interesting to see that side of the world for a while. And then I went into bank internal auditing for a regional bank out here, and was kind of their dedicated Bank Secrecy Act internal auditor and auditor for the trust company. So again, super interesting, but it was also 2007. So I was there during the whole crisis. So I was there towards the end of like the last good year, and then everything just kind of went down from there. So that was a very interesting time. And then I had impeccable timing and joined my dad February 16th, 2009. So like,
awesome timing.
I know, right? Yeah, I really couldn't have done it better. And we had been talking for a while, and it's funny. It was actually my ex-husband who encouraged me to go this route. I hadn't really considered it because it required working from home. Like our main office was in Fargo. I traveled a fair amount to the Fargo office and to see clients. And
by horseback, I assume, because it is Fargo.
Obviously, when you're in Fargo, you don't have internet or phone or anything like that.
No, I was wondering, you called it the upper Midwest, and I've always wondered how people in the Dakotas view themselves. Because in Montana, we consider ourselves Mountain West, which I don't even think is a technical term, but we call it that. So upper Midwest, I like that. Canada also counts. But
I know in Minnesota, there's like a big movement to start calling us the North, because we're culturally different than the Midwest.
Yes.
Oh, that's just Game of Thrones. I love it. I apologize. So I digress. So
no, that's perfect. Yeah,
traveling a lot to Fargo.
Yeah, traveling a lot. And so I did some part-time work for him while I was still at the bank, and then switched to full-time work and worked from home for several years before even getting my first office. And just ended up liking it. And, at the time we were still affiliated with a broker-dealer. And so did the Series 7, 66, and then got my CFP. I took the test in 2011 and got everything done in 2012, like experience and stuff. And yeah, I just enjoyed it. But our previous firm was more operational heavy, compliance heavy, because that was my background. So
so is that what you were brought in to do, was really on that side, or was it sort of advisor with this tilt towards compliance?
I think it was kind of more of like an advisor with a tilt towards compliance, but it kind of ended up more being like compliance with a tilt towards advising, compliance and like operations and running the business and that kind of stuff. So it wasn't full advising like all the time. And I did enjoy that piece of it. Like I like the operation side and the compliance side. So, that part it was good, and it was kind of in my wheelhouse, but it was a nice way to like phase into the industry rather than just kind of getting thrown to the wolves.
The capacity to do the work that no one else wants to do is that you end up doing all of the work that no one else wants to do.
And that's the only thing you get to do.
And that was the only thing you get to do. And I think that was Courtney's experience probably at our previous firm.
Yes. Yeah. I was trying not to say that too harshly.
On that part, yeah.
Yeah, but no, it was a lot of work that eventually I was like, oh, I'd like to be doing more, doing different things, and you really get pigeonholed, and that was frustrating. So that's one thing that's important to me now is if I'm doing a lot of things that I'm just like, ugh, then I'm kind of like, okay, I need to speak up and be more vocal about this so that
those are the first things you should hire for or outsource for sure.
Exactly. Like I don't enjoy the operational stuff as much anymore because I want to be doing more advising. Like I want to be working with our clients. And so, like as we ramp up and build our firm, those are the kind of things that I'm looking for in someone else to be good at so that I don't have to do it.
Yeah, you made the point about working from home and not being sure about it. I think that's actually something that I have always taken for granted, that like everyone would enjoy working from home. And here at XY, before we had a headquarters, everyone did work from home. And I didn't fully appreciate how hard of a transition that was for our people at times when they're used to getting up at a certain time every day and going to the office, and that's their social network, to then be like, okay, you just work from home and, call me if you need me, is culture shock. However, 18 to 24 months later, when I'm trying to get them to come into the office, they're like, no, I think I'll work from home today. So it is funny how you get used to it. But was that a tough transition for you, or did you just like fully embrace it?
I think a little bit of both. The discipline it takes to work from home, especially for a small business where you have to be really self-directed anyway, that was an adjustment for me. And I feel like that's an adjustment for most people. Like, you have to be self-motivated pretty much all the time.
All day.
Like you don't have someone else pushing you. I mean, everyone else lived 1,500 miles away. And plus I was 2 hours behind too, which was a bit frustrating at times. And then I was at home with my 2 dogs, and I do tend to be pretty introverted, so if I didn't get out at all, that was not great, because then I would just be like a little bit too much energy by the end of the day. Like just a little too crazy. Yeah. So a lot of times I would, like go for a run towards the end of the day just to kind of burn off all that extra energy that I would kind of accumulate during the day. But I eventually just kind of got a routine. One thing I did a lot though is like early on, I would just work all the time. Like I would, work until like 3 or 4, and then I'd go exercise or go running or whatever. And then in the evening I'd eat dinner, and then I'd be working again. Like I just kind of always was sitting down to work, and that's not ideal. And I tend to do that anyway. I kind of like break up my day with work, but you can't really do that when you have kids because they demand a lot of your attention in the evening now. So I've gotten out of that habit for the most part. But yeah, I finally had to like set cutoffs for myself, because otherwise I wouldn't go to sleep at night. I would be like, okay, no computer after 9 o'clock, otherwise you don't sleep. So
yeah, always something to do.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate you sharing that, because like I said, I never fully appreciated how difficult that was, because I sort of eased into it myself, probably without recognizing some of the challenges there. But the other point that you made, which I think is a really good one, around doing a lot of the things that you don't want to be doing. So, or that, taking on some things becomes a lot of things. And JD Bruce from Abacus, he was here for Accelerate, and we had lunch. And one of the things he told me that they've started doing, and we've now incorporated with our team, is he calls it a genius chart. So it's a XY axis, and on one axis is adept on one side and then inept on the other, and then love to hate. So you end up with these 4 quadrants. And if you hate doing it and you're not good at it, that's easy, right? You just get rid of those things. If you love doing it and you're great at it, you keep those things. The challenge is the things that you really love doing that you're not good at, Okay, that's where we need to skill build. But the things that you are really great at but hate doing, that's where people get pigeonholed. And there's different levels of hate, right? It's not like I never want to do it another day in my life. But if there are things that just don't bring you energy and sort of drain you, but you're really gifted at, it can be such a challenge to get those things off your plate, because who can do it better than you? Maybe no one, but you hate doing it, so it drains you, and so you need to get rid of it. So I feel like that's where folks get sort of a lot of times that's where we pigeonhole people or into these things that we honestly should let them out of, but it's a challenge.
Totally. Yeah. And I think Courtney and I are both perfectionists as well. And so, we have an even tougher time delegating, but that doesn't mean that we enjoy every task that we do.
And hence our lean and working with her. Right. No. So Morgan, what was sort of your path into the firm?
Yeah. So I was a religion major in college, actually. I'm a little bit more all over the place. And graduated, and I moved to Peru for a little while and taught English, and then kind of traveled throughout South America. And then I came back in the winter of 2008 and got an internship at a broker-dealer out in Wisconsin, and did that for 4 or 5 months. And that was an interesting experience, but it was all just back office stuff. I think I was helping them transition a technology platform. And then, it was kind of similar to Courtney, except I was, I think she was already doing some part-time work with our dad's firm, but he needed some help, and I was basically just going to work for him for like 3-4 months and then make enough money to go back down to Peru. That was my goal. I really wanted to spend 5-10 years down in South America doing, I have no idea what, but that's where I wanted to be. Anyway, so as you know, that was the financial crisis. If you haven't heard of it, it was a stressful time for a lot of financial advisors. And my job was basically just to kick out correspondence. And so, we were kicking out letters, pretty much every week to clients. And that was before, that you would like bulk email things to people. It was
right, one letters. By one.
Exactly. And I kind of developed an interest in it. It was fascinating to me. And I think, my experience in Latin America was learning in some ways just how important economic systems are, in the investment world, in the global investment world, and trade and all this stuff. So I just got more and more interested in it. By that December, I had enrolled in the CFA program. And the reasoning was my dad was a CFP, and I wanted to find something that I thought might be harder than what he did. And that was the CFA. So
that is such awesome motivation.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to beat dad.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. What's the hardest thing I can do? And that kind of, I went through the CFA program, and my role expanded ultimately to helping with the investments and to managing all of the investments, within the guidance of the firm. And so my experience, before starting Trailhead was definitely more on the investment side. And I think similar to Courtney, just kind of had this, I was working from home a lot, or, it's kind of like Morgan, the introvert, is off in the office doing, investment research or whatever, trades for, all the portfolios. And I really wanted to be meeting with people. I just wasn't inspired. I wasn't energetic. And that's, kind of where my curiosity was piqued about becoming a financial planner. And from there, I enrolled in the Registered Life Planner program with the Kinder Institute. And that was very inspirational to me as well. And ultimately, we started Trailhead pretty soon after that.
So I guess the all-important question is, do you have the CFA?
I do have the CFA.
Okay, yep. So you made it through, because that would have been a great end of the story. And I failed
and then I
all
failed
the exams.
Yep.
Dad wins.
Yeah. Right. I didn't pass the first time around, and then I kind of went through the program pretty quickly after that.
I think the exam has like a 35% pass rate. It's ridiculous.
It's low. Yeah.
I signed up for the first test, studied for 6 months, and then didn't even show up for it. Because I knew I wasn't going to pass, and 2, I knew I was never taking level 2. So I just totally bailed on it. I've actually been seeing CFA like commercials lately on just like online ads, and they're like, only X% of people ever, that start the program ever finish. And it's like a ridiculously low percentage.
Yeah.
And they're saying like, oh, so you should hire a CFA. And all I see is like, wow, yeah, it's a really high failure rate. But
it's funny. I feel like, looking back, your route might have been a better route in terms of just like not showing up, because like that 3 to 4 years of my life is a total blur. There was no social life. There was nothing else going on besides work and the CFA. And then it's funny you bring up the pass rate too, because I just passed the CFP a couple weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And I was just kind of, Courtney and I were talking about how like the CFA really advertises the low pass rate, and the CFP, is kind of different at this point, where I think, it's trying to get as many people into the CFP program as possible.
Right.
At present, which is good.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I do remember when I was taking it, I don't know, maybe the year before, they had dropped, they went on the CFA, they went from 4 answer multiple choice questions to 3 answer multiple choice questions, and the pass rate didn't change. So like, that's how hard that exam is you can eliminate a fourth of the answers and it still doesn't help people.
Oh, totally.
So I guess for the young advisors that are out there that are trying to make their mark on the world and try to get the education and have the credentials, do you recommend the CFA? Like, is it, for an advisor in your position that's, we'll say, planning centric, but also does investing? I don't know if you're doing individual stocks, but do you think it's a good designation to have for the type of work that you're doing today?
Yeah, that's a complicated question. For what I do right now, which is planning centric, that is my passion and the way I want to connect with clients. Is the CFA necessary? No. Am I glad I have it? Yes. I think I do bring a dynamic that most advisors don't have, which is a depth of understanding about investments in particular. But, if you're going to do the CFA, make sure you have a passion for investments, and that's something you want to incorporate into your business, or that you want to work on the investment management side of a larger RIA or something like that. It's not worth it otherwise. That's a long 3 to 4 years or longer.
Yeah, exactly. Assuming you pass every time. So tell me a little bit about the Kinder, registered life planner program, because we've had a few people on the show that have mentioned it, but just sort of give from your perspective what it is and why you ultimately chose to go through that program.
Yeah, and I should point out that we're both huge advocates of life planning in particular. Courtney's gone through the Money Quotient program. Oh, perfect. And I might follow in her steps and do that this summer. I just needed some outside inspiration, and so I signed up for the. Actually, I should back up a little bit. I had this moment of total inspiration a few years back where I was like, man, if someone just blended life coaching with financial planning, it would be amazing. And I thought I was a total genius. I thought I was the smartest guy in the world. And I was like, I'm going to make millions of dollars because people are going to think this is so awesome. I'm going to write books, etc. And then I met George Kinder, who had been doing that for a decade and had an institute surrounding it. So my ego was deflated, and I said I should probably go try to learn from this person. I signed up for the 2-day event, which is, I think the 7 stages of money maturity, and which is a very good intro to what Kinder is about, and in a good way without parting with too much money to kind of see if this is for you. And I was just so floored by the experience. I was so inspired, and I look at that 2 days of my life as a total shift into what my life is today, which is I'm pretty happy. And before that, I don't think I was very happy with where I was in life. Yeah. So
that's awesome that it was both meaningful from a business perspective and helping clients, but also meaningful for you and sort of discovering your own why. Yeah.
And I think, I've heard some criticisms of Kinder. For me, it was amazing. But the one thing I'll say about Kinder that I don't think it's appreciated is that you get transformed. Right? So you get this life plan, and that's impactful. That's worth it. Like I said, for me, it changed everything.
Yeah. So just give me an overview for the listeners who have never heard of George Kinder. Like, why would someone go through the program? What's sort of not the actual curriculum, but sort of the why? Why do you go through that program, and what do you learn?
Yeah. So I think of the CFP is like the technical side of financial planning. Life planning is, the why of it all. Why are you here? What do you want out of life? And what is your money going to do to support that? Or how can your money support that? And George has written a number of books on that topic. And then he has the Kinder Institute that helps train advisors, and basically just a process of inquiry and how we connect with clients, how we relate to them, how we generate their goals or their vision statement, and then confront obstacles together. So I think, it blends everything from, how to ask questions to how to really listen to people, and it's a training course in appreciative inquiry, which is, kind of another facet. So, very comprehensive. And like I said, it's the softer side of financial planning.
And I like to call it the art, it's the art and the science, and the CFP board is so great at teaching us the science, but there are other programs like Kinder and Money Quotient, which both teach us the art, which in my opinion is what really matters, because ultimately the most technical, well-laid financial plan is useless if people don't understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. So
exactly.
So Courtney, how do you, based on, sort of Morgan's training and that sort of thing with Kinder, how do you compare that with Money Quotient? Do you feel like they're similar programs, or are there some distinct differences between the two?
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like Kinder stresses really that qualitative side. I kind of separated into between like quantitative and qualitative, and that qualitative side of financial planning. And Money Quotient does that too, but everything's backed by extensive research into behavioral economics, psychology, behavioral finance, all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit different in that regard. I think that Kinder does more empathy training. That's often how Morgan describes it, where you're really learning to be empathetic with your clients and be a listener and let that help guide you as you build this plan for them and work with them. And Money Quotient has that, but I don't think to the same degree. And I do like the Money Quotient tools. I use their handouts pretty much at every meeting. And the thought that Carol and her team has put into creating the questions and developing each tool is pretty extensive and impressive. And plus they have a fair amount of support, like ongoing support as we go along, which is nice as well. So I think it's a better fit for me and my personality, which is why I went the Money Quotient route. I really like Carol, and Carol's also introverted and just and she's kind of wonky. Like that's like she just wants to like nerd out on the research and all that technical stuff, and then build it out to create this really awesome program. And I can really appreciate that. I like how she does things, but I've never met George Kinder and I haven't done the Kinder program. So I'm interested in it. I need to wait till my kids are a little older before I like leave my husband for a week and do that. But I'm definitely more interested in it now than I was before doing Money Quotient.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you both for sort of giving your insights into those programs. They're both phenomenal programs. I have not been through either, but I am very familiar with both. And anyone out there who wants to learn the art of financial planning, those are two ways of doing it. It's just to go out and see some of the experts and see how they communicate with their clients. So switching gears a little bit, so I guess it was a couple years ago now, you decided to break away and start your own firm. So can you tell me about sort of that decision and if there was some sort of impetus for doing it, or it just felt like the right time to be able to go off on your own and become entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So this is always kind of an interesting topic for us because it's still pretty fresh. I actually started at the end of 2015, started working with a marketing consultant out here in Portland, and she never worked with a financial planner before. She'd always she always had a focus on green businesses, but she'd like worked with a lot of the builders out here who do like LEED certified apartments and that kind of stuff. So she'd done a lot of really cool work, and I really wanted to do more and build a practice in Portland, but I had to be different in Portland than we were in Fargo. Like different, it's just a different demographic, different investment needs. I mean, even just the basics of like living in the two cities are so different because Portland is so expensive and Fargo is pretty cheap. And so, just different needs for what your clients are looking for. And I started talking to her, and we were doing a lot of like mission, vision, purpose, values work. And I enjoyed it. Like that's normally not really my wheelhouse, but I really started to enjoy that work. And then once I kind of started sending it out to the firm, Morgan was really excited about it, but no one else really was. And which is a little disheartening when you're putting a lot of effort into something and then people email you back and are like, I don't like this. This is bad. You like, not that bluntly, but sometimes. And then I just kind of felt like I couldn't do anything right. And I really couldn't capture what was making us like a cohesive unit. And we were so spread out that made it tricky as well. And so there was a few other things that kind of came down, and I was really struggling. I had a 1-year-old that didn't sleep, and a 1 year of sleep deprivation. At that point, it was probably like a good 18 months of sleep deprivation. Got a little tough for me. So I was struggling and needed some extra support at work, and wasn't necessarily finding that. And so Morgan and I decided that we wanted to. At this point, Morgan had joined me on some of the calls with the marketing consultant, and we kind of decided that it would be best if we could branch out and really take this mission, vision, and purpose work that we had been doing for a previous firm and transform it into a firm that we've built ourselves, where we can stress the things that are important to us. And JD talked a lot about that at Accelerate, where, everything is around their core values. Like, they hire and fire around their core values. And that really resonated with me after all the work that Morgan and I had put into doing this, kind of going through this process back in 2016. And now I recognize how important it is when you have a firm is, to have a solid mission and a vision for what you're doing, and build some core values, not only for your clients, but also as you're growing and for hiring. So I love JD's whole presentation, that whole afternoon, just because it was such an affirmation of the work that we had done.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it can be very frustrating when you have a passion that your firm's not necessarily supporting. And are there firms out there you could have gotten a job at, focusing on SRI? Absolutely. But, maybe a little more fun to do it on your own. So what year, remind me, and you said it earlier and I missed it, what year did y'all launch?
2016.
Okay, 16. So so 2
and
years
we were
in
live by 2017. So, it was a long process.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a long process.
And as you might be surmising, that this is a loaded topic for Courtney and
Understood.
And yeah, but I think just to kind of add some layers to that, we started advocating within the firm to develop our own brand. We were both blogging at that point quite a bit, and kind of developing our own voices, and realizing that, the type of clients that were attracted to the firm were not the type of clients that would be attracted to the way Courtney and me wanted to serve clients. And we love recurring processes, and we wanted, a way to interact with our clients and a way to serve our clients that was repeatable, and scalable and all those things. And so, it was a similar experience to get that client to wow, basically. So we started advocating for our own brand, and, and my dad, in his wisdom, who has since, kind of phased out of that firm as well, the legacy firm, was just kind of I think you guys should all have a broader conversation on whether you should really be partners going forward, which is something that I don't even think had occurred to us. And so we had that conversation, and, we all decided to kind of go our separate ways. And I think that was, hard, very hard at times. And I'm sure there's still, the thing with negotiation is, if it's successful, not everybody, no one gets what they want, right? You get most of what you want, but not all of it. So, not everybody's happy about everything, but I think it was the best going forward. I think Courtney and I in particular are extremely grateful for how things worked out.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And you did say that you were able to bring over some clients with you. Was that just contractually, were those your clients? Were you able to buy them out, or just the way it worked out, they were able to go with you? Do you mind sharing that piece of it?
This is super complicated, but we can kind of get the bullet points out. So basically, there was a group of clients that were already on the socially responsible platform. Most of these were actually out in California. I was the one servicing them along with Courtney, along with my dad. Those clients were really good fits for us culturally, values wise. And I think we're excited to, kind of work with us under this brand that was more about this stuff in particular. And then there was, kind of some other clients that, hey, they're in the Minneapolis area, or they're in, out in the Pacific Northwest. So there's kind of locational stuff. There are other ones that, wanted to kind of stick with the Randstroms as close as they could, and felt that, by sticking with Courtney and me, they were, closer to my dad, which I think is true ultimately. So, and I should say that our dad, is partial owner of our firm right now. He's a silent partner.
No. He's a not so silent partner.
That's a good point.
Yeah, not so silent partner. And he consults with our clients, through Trailhead. So he kind of acts as an independent consultant and visits many of those clients that he's worked with for decades.
Okay. No, thank you for sharing that. It's always, it's one of those things. Anytime we get a job, right, we go into that first, second, third firm, wherever we are in our career, we just assume everything's going to work out. And hopefully it does. But statistically speaking, it probably won't. And so actually thinking about who owns the client relationship? What can you do? What can't you do? And it's not about setting yourself up to screw over your firm or anything like that. But it is that, when you go to leave, you want to know how to leave. And so whether it's, that there's an automated buyout, which is what I had, that if I took any clients, I had a non-compete, but if I took clients, I had to pay. Okay. That's fine. Or if it's in an ensemble, in more of a siloed practice format, then maybe they're your clients. It's not a big deal. But it's something to think about for the listeners that are getting a job or negotiating that contract, just to think about and actually read what you sign before you sign it. Don't let a lawyer be the first one to read it after you've quit and then try to figure out what you're doing. So you both have a passion around, you said, social responsibility, particularly on the environmental side. How does that show up and play into the work that you do with clients? Is it simply on the investing side and you just have SRI models, or is it something broader than that in the work that you're doing with those clients?
That's a good question. I think, in working with Arlene, man, she's going to be so happy with me because I've name dropped her 3 or 4 times already.
She's our favorite.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, Arlene Moss is our executive business coach at XYPN Network, works with many of our advisors, with the two of you being 2 of them. So for anybody who doesn't know who Arlene is.
But we've labeled 2018 the year of the client experience. And, basically all of last year, we were transitioning these clients over to the new platform. We had just gone signed on with TD. We had just started with XYPN Network. And that was our main focus, is basically just seeing people and doing paperwork. And so we kind of think of this year as the first year as we're, kind of moving forward. And I should say that in that process, Courtney had another little girl. I had my little girl in January of this year. So there's kind of been some other things going on as well. But we've called 2018 the year of the client experience. And so, we kind of want this branded experience from the second we first, hear of someone, talk to them, call them, receive a call, receive an email, et cetera, through they've been with our firm for 5 to 10 years, hopefully, at some point. And I think, ultimately that experience should, speak to things like you're bringing up. And we've kind of discussed, do we donate to different, let's say environmental conservation places, in honor of a new client or something like that. We've talked about giving away financial plans for free, kind of doing some more pro bono work, which we do some of, but, maybe, making that more of a, central to our brand. We're not so sure yet, but definitely that's an aspiration of ours. Do you have anything to add to that, Courtney?
Yeah. I think for both of us, our communities are important, and supporting the communities around us. And so part of that is going to be, some pro bono work, trying to build that into each quarter so that we have time for that. And then giving back, whether it's, what that looks like if we're doing client gifts, donations to the Arbortree Foundation, and building trees in the name of clients, planting trees in the name of clients. That kind of stuff is, just having a bit of an environmental and social bent to it as we kind of work through some of these things. We do try to use DocuSign as much as possible and try to be paperless, but it's still super tough in this industry to be paperless. And there's still some things, especially the 529 plans at TD and stuff, you have to use paper. It's paper and snail mail, and you're good grief. So
that's a good point.
Yeah. So we'll never completely get out of that whole cycle, but we do try to be as conscientious as possible just in our own offices, and hopefully that that can carry through.
Yeah, I think you make an awesome point that part of it is, I guess there's a few different ways that this gets showcased. One is you can say who you are on your website, in your bio, and that sort of thing, and just tell people that that's who you are, so that if somebody comes in and doesn't give a crap, then maybe they're not going to be a good fit for you. That if they truly don't ever care, then maybe it's not a good fit. The other way is in the financial planning process. So maybe there's, like many other areas, maybe it's money that they're donating or leaving money to certain organizations and that sort of thing. There's the investment process. That's the clear one. But then it's also like, what do you do with your clients? And I think that's interesting around like if you had enough clients in a central area to be able to do, on National Arbor Day, and honestly, like you go plant trees together, like you do things like that they don't have to be cheesy, but can say like, hey, we're all in this together, and we want to have this similar impact on the world. So I think it's awesome to be able to think about those types of things and incorporate that in so that your clients can really see who you are as part of it.
Yeah. And I think there's like some natural, progressions into how we relate with clients where there's, okay, so you want to invest with purpose. Well, let's talk about also spending with purpose, right? Are you a conscious consumer? Let's also talk about giving with purpose, right? So where are your charity dollars going? Why? Can we maximize that? Can we get you to something that's a little more important to you or a little more meaningful? So it all plays together into how we relate to clients. And I would say that's kind of the core of it as it sets right now.
No, I think that's great. It'll be cool to hear over the next year or two as you're out of just doing client paperwork and transitioning clients and all of that. What other things you can come up with as ways to sort of highlight this part of the practice that you want to be in. So are y'all doing a lot of on the SRI like investment front? Is that a core focus?
Yeah. So we run our own investment models. We have traditional ones, and then we have, we call them ESG optimized, which is kind of our brand of social responsible investing. And then I think, Courtney just developed a series of low carbon or carbon neutral investment models. And we'd like to build, just kind of different places where, a client could come in and say, yep, that's the one I want. And so we're kind of working on that. But yeah, so we run them ourselves. We do all the research. We pick the funds. We do the rebalancing, et cetera.
Okay. Yeah. And do you mind if I ask, like with your carbon tilt or the carbon neutral funds, is that like a DFA thing or a BlackRock thing? Is it sort of a specific fund company, or are you really going out there and finding these, or has someone sort of built out the framework for you?
No, I went out and found the mutual funds and ETFs that we use self. I hate to pitch a certain fund company, but I mean, there's a few that, have never done any sort of investment in fossil fuels, Green Century being one of them. And they were actually the original mutual fund company in the US to stop doing investment in fossil fuels. And so really looking at that, and it's not it's low carbon. I feel like over time it will get better and better. There's still a carbon influence pretty much in every single fund that you have. And one thing that I have really been struggling with lately is a lot of the so-called green mutual funds are heavy on the tech companies. So you're not investing in fossil fuels per se, but they use a lot of energy. And, then you have to look at where are they getting that energy? Apple is definitely moving more towards sustainable resources and using sustainable energy, but you have to factor in just the impact that all of their stuff has on our world. And so that's kind of my latest endeavor is really thinking about that. And because it's not just fossil fuel companies, it's
exactly
it's everything that we do. But I had the request from a client to really go more low carbon, and I wanted that for my own portfolio as well. And so that really kind of got me doing this research. The social and governance stuff is also really important to me. We're also getting more requests for no weapons manufacturers and stuff like that. But there's a couple decent screening tools out there that you can use that are free. A couple different websites.
What's your go-to for that?
You know what? I'm going to pull it up right now because I always forget the name of the website.
And this is a tough conversation because I know with a lot of what's been happening lately, folks say, okay, I want guns out of my model. I don't want to support gun companies. And it's really easy to go remove gun manufacturers from a portfolio. It is much harder to remove every single company that sells guns or builds things that are used in the making of guns. And like suddenly, okay, you're not invested in Walmart or Dick's Sporting Goods anymore because they sell guns. And so it's like, and that's the challenge with SRI is it really is like, how far can you go? How far do you go until you're no longer accomplishing what the client's trying to accomplish? And I guess, do you have that conversation with them to say, to understand the depth at which, I just don't want gun manufacturers, or I want to go so deep as to say like, or anybody who has any position or any part to play in the selling of guns, like and environmental being the same thing. Like, do you have that conversation?
We do. Yeah. And so, I think another thing too, with you look at like ESG funds or ETFs, for example, it's like the two biggest sectors are, as Courtney said, tech, and then the other one is financials, right? And so I think a lot of people that we tend to get as clients also have some misgivings about the big banks, right? And so it's like there's no perfect solution at this point, and we try to be pretty clear about that in our client conversations. That look, this is not going to save the world. This is not, your $500,000 portfolio is not going to be the difference in the world becoming a better place. But you can invest as close to your values, as you can. But there's also this like responsibility quotient. And that's why we still try to diversify everything. We still try to use low fee indices. We still try to be globally diversified. You still have to be a responsible investor, but you want to have the social responsible tilt as well.
Yeah, like I said, it's the tough piece where people say, "Oh, I do SRI," and it's like, that means nothing. Like you got to go further than that to really understand.
And frankly, I think there's some like irresponsible branding out there too. That like you're an impact investor now, and it's like, well, that's not true. To be an impact investor, you're really starting to talk about philanthropy or investing in startups or something like that. I don't know if having $100,000 and iShares ESG is, like I said, going to have this massive impact, but it can make you feel a lot better. And I think it does have impact. It's just not maybe to the degree that it gets marketed.
Yeah, it's also a good point that I just think what am I trying to say? That our clients' desires have changed, and they are shifting slowly over time. Where it's not just about earning the most money as possible. It is shifting into wanting to have some level of impact on the world, whether it's a big impact or small impact. Wanting to know that the way you're investing in the companies you're investing in represent who you are. Because in an ideal world, if diversification wasn't a thing, you would just go out and put money into 10 different big companies that you really like and support, and have female CEOs or support the environment or sort of whatever your passion is. But when you're investing in 15,000 companies at once, makes it a little bit more difficult. But Courtney, were you able to find that website?
Yes, I was. I have it pulled up. So it's the Forum for Sustainable and Responsible Investing, just usif.org. And they have a really great chart that has a whole screening and advocacy tab. And they actually mark, they have several different categories. So like climate, clean tech, pollution, community development. They have a little area that says has a formal policy restricting investment in fossil fuels. So then you can start going through and like weeding out, the ones that maybe invest in fossil fuels, but have some sort of like positive / restricted strategy when they're investing, and versus funds that are just saying, no, we don't invest in fossil fuels at all, and kind of going from there. So I utilized that a fair amount, and then went on to do my own research beyond that. Like there was one fund that a client asked me about, but one of their biggest holdings was in a multi-level marketing company. And I just don't believe that that's a good use of people's money. Right. And so, because I worry about just the predatory behavior of a lot of those MLM companies. And so I was like, this is probably not a great idea for you. And we kind of talk through why I say, veto certain mutual funds and kind of my thought process behind it. And then another thing that I really try to point out is like, we really try to be cognizant of fees when we're investing in different mutual funds and ETFs. But one thing, when you're looking at the different green or ESG mutual funds is some of your fees are going towards advocacy. So I feel like there is a benefit in investing in some of these mutual funds, like a Green Century, like a Calvert, Appleseed, whatever. Like there's so many out there right now, because they're the ones that are driving that company change. They're filing the proxies. They're saying, vote on these different shareholder resolutions. And I think that's important. So even if not all the companies that they invest in are ones that I agree with or ones that I particularly want to hold, they're also trying to push change. Calvert will go to like Amazon's annual meeting and try to push some change there. And I think that's a really positive part of it. Now, I don't use those funds for like the entire portfolio, because they do tend to be a little bit more expensive, because that costs money to go out and do that much advocacy work. But I feel like if you can balance your portfolio with a mix of different funds where, you pay a little bit more in fees, but you're getting this like policy change advocacy work from these funds, versus then trying to use more ESG index funds for some of your other categories, that can be really helpful, especially if that's important to you. If it's not important to you, then it doesn't matter. But yeah, I think it's a good way to keep getting our voices heard and use our money for good purposes.
So let me ask you this, and this is purely my perception, and I'm curious if this is a struggle for you. So you are both incredibly passionate about what I like to call real financial planning, as evidenced by the investment of time and money into going through Kinder and going through Money Quotient. So you really understand and embrace real financial planning. And part of that, I would argue, is this, passion around socially responsible investing and how that impacts your clients, and being able to dig in and really understand who they are and what they want and what matters to them. However, SRI tends to become an investment heavy conversation. So do you feel any type of tension or battle that y'all really want to be having these conversations and doing real financial planning, but you end up just doing a lot of investment model research, or is it so tied in that you're comfortable with that balance?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've got 10 years of investment experience at this point. So, I think like running a model, I think there's a lot of people that come into the financial planning industry that like try to start their firm, and they don't have that like investment management experience. And then I would say use a TAMP. I think that's like the best route. And Courtney and I have talked about that. I think it would have been irresponsible not to explore that. But we still feel, strongly that we can do this, that we have the experience to do this, that, we enjoy doing some of the investment research and building portfolios, and that it doesn't, distract too much. Although I think there's things that we should definitely be outsourcing. I think of it more of like a brand experience. Like, do you want to lead with financial planning, or do you want to lead with socially responsible investments? And it's hard to do both at the same time. And so that's like an ongoing conversation, is like, what are we leading with? What kind of clients are attracted to our messaging? Are we just getting, someone who wants to invest X amount of money in socially responsible investments? Or are we getting someone who wants the comprehensive financial planning experience, which is what we're ultimately looking for, I think.
Yeah, and it's been interesting because people will actually use the ESG bent on our website as a way to kind of, get to know us better. And like, as they're screening different advisors, they're like, oh, I really like your website. And then they'll say like, we want financial planning, but we came to you because you guys do SRI. We don't have any money right now to invest, but we like that you do that for down the road. But right now we really just want financial planning. And so it's been an interesting kind of screening tool that clients will use, even if they don't have much by way of investment assets, and they come to us for financial planning. And I think it's just a cultural thing.
Yeah, I think you got into what I was trying to ask. I'm not sure I asked it in the best way, but is that like, what are you leading with? Because I guess that's really what's going to drive it. Because if you lead with SRI investing and, oh yeah, we also do financial planning, that is going to attract a different client than we do financial planning and believe in SRI. And here's who we are. Again, it's just going to attract a different client. It's just interesting that it is such an investment heavy implementation or execution, I should say, whereas so many other things that we do are less execution intensive. I don't know. I was just curious if that's ever a challenge.
Yeah, it hasn't been too difficult for me yet. I think that investment side, I just find it more interesting than just pure like, let's look at different stocks and bonds and stuff like that. Like, I like to know how our money our money is being used. So I have more passion for it, so I enjoy it more. But I'm sure that's something that will come up down the line where we might run into this a bit more, where people are like, oh, I just more want the investing side and not the financial planning side. And we're trying to be pretty clear, like, if you work with us, you're doing a financial plan. Like that's our job. And then investing is part of that financial plan.
It's the implementation of that financial plan, but we have no idea how to invest your money until we have a financial plan ready for you.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think I always struggle with that. To do investments without financial planning to me is impossible. But so, Courtney, you've mentioned that you've been doing a lot of the investment research. Morgan with a CFA would, if someone just looks at a piece of paper and bios, they're going to say, okay, Morgan does all the investing, Courtney does all the financial planning. Clearly not the case. So how do y'all split duties at the firm? So, you're equals, partners and have varied backgrounds in terms of when it comes to investing and financial planning. Like you both seem on an even playing field that you could both play both roles. So I guess, how are y'all splitting duties at the firm, from planning to investments, but also compliance and operations?
Yeah. So Morgan does the bulk of our investing and like almost all of our trading. He's been doing it for so long, just from the previous firm and over. So, and like when I built this model and started doing some trades and stuff like that, like I really rely on him and his expertise in this area, because this is really his wheelhouse. Even though he wants to be more in an advisor facing role, I still want to like utilize that institutional knowledge. Operations and compliance is still more my role. Morgan has done some paperwork now.
I know how that is.
Yeah,
not so successfully all the time, but I have generated a few forms. Yes.
Yeah. But there was a pretty lengthy stretch where I pretty much had done all the paperwork, and like he never saves things and names them the way that like is intuitive to me, and I need to have better like write out. I kind of have guidelines for myself, but I need to like have more formal guidelines. So when he saves things, I don't have to go back in and like rename everything, because that's usually what I end up doing. And that's just kind of my own persnickiness around just how folders are organized. But yeah, kind of like that business operations side is more my task. Morgan is definitely more of the idea person, and I would say I'm probably more of the implementer. Like Morgan comes up with the coolest ideas, and he writes on our blog and is just really creative. Like I'm a good writer, but I feel like I'm a good technical writer. Morgan's just a good writer for like any purpose. And so just coming up with like our branding and our messaging, all of that kind of stuff, it falls a lot on him, and he really enjoys it. And I kind of am more the technical side, where I like to do like the editing portion of that, and like more the nitty gritty kind of like day-to-day things. And whenever someone comes at me with like a big picture or big idea, I'm like, well, how would we do this?
Oh, I hate people like that.
I know.
Like it doesn't matter. I just have ideas.
I know, exactly.
Poor Courtney. I mean, I send so many ideas her way during the week, and somehow she has to like sift through them. And I can always tell when she's like super busy, because she just ignores me for like 2 weeks straight.
And then it just boils and it like bubbles over, and you're like, no, this idea, it must get out. We must talk about it.
You missed the window for the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, there's usually a once every week or 2 week phone call that gets super lengthy, and it's just like lots of ideas and stuff. And I'm just a pretty like deliberate thinker. And so when I hear an idea, I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I must ponder this for quite some time now. Like I need to like sit down and just like stew on it for a while and see how it's all going to work out. And like, I like to know the procedure for everything, like how you're going to do it. And so I think that kind of more falls on my shoulders. But
I'll just jump in and say like, yeah, so I do most of like the digital marketing and like Courtney said, the branding. But I've kind of gotten to the point where, I come up with like 2 ideas and I say, Courtney, which one do you like better? And usually she's like, correct. She's the one that named the firm. I had like 10 of these like super techie, annoying names that I had, written up. And she's like, what about Trailhead Planners? And it was perfect, right? And it totally fit everything that we were trying to do. But I do see, since I do a lot of the writing, and I love to do the writing. One thing that, Courtney and I have been talking a lot about is like, how do we get her voice out there? And so, Alan, I remember you talking about on one of the podcasts that, blogging came harder to you. So you like the podcast. And so, Courtney and I like, should we start doing videos or podcasting or something like that? Because I want, clients and prospective clients alike to really get to hear her voice, because I think it offers so much value.
Well, that is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I cannot believe how fast this hour has gone. There's so much of this that I'd love to explore further, but I appreciate you both sharing just your passion and vision for the firm and the directions that you're growing towards. And again, some of the big decisions that you have to make that, sometimes we like to act like we have everything figured out. In reality, like we're all just treading water, trying to figure it out as we go. Beauty of entrepreneurship. So as we're coming to a close, I'll ask you each the final question. So Morgan, I'll make you go first. And that is, if there's one piece of advice that you wish you could go back and give your younger self, that one thing that you've learned, the thing that you wish you knew then that you know now, what do you think that one piece of advice would be?
Yeah, it's really the same thing that I tell my clients, and that's that everything has to start with purpose. And I think for most of my 20s, I didn't realize that the why matters. The why is principle. And if you figure that out, everything will come into place. But if you kind of just, drift with the wind or let others dictate, your path, whether that's career or life or otherwise, you'll kind of wake up someday and say, it's funny that I ended up here because it lacked intention. So start with that purpose. If you want to be an entrepreneur, if you're drawn to that, my goodness, go for it.
Thank you for that. Courtney, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the first one is just don't take yourself too seriously in your 20s. I really forced myself to, finish grad school, get married, start working, and do everything, quote unquote, the correct way and be an adult. And I really should have taken some more time to travel or, teach English someplace or do the Peace Corps, do something like that. And so now my husband and I look at ways to incorporate that into our lives with our girls once they're a little older, to travel and kind of have more of these experiences, because both of us just worked so much in our 20s and focused on building a career. And I think I could have laid off a little bit and still been just fine.
Fair enough. Well, thank you both for that. And again, for coming on the show and sharing your path and what you're working on. I can't wait to see what comes next for the firm. So thank you both so much.
Thanks, Alan.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Support for today's episode comes from Ruby Receptionist. Let Ruby help you turn callers into customers. For a special offer, visit callruby.com/XYPN and use promo code XYPN, or better yet, call them at 844-853-7829. Be sure to join our VIP community at XYPlanningNetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to XYPlanningNetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.